Welcome back, everybody. I hope you're all refreshed and ready for our pre-lunch session. We have two fantastic speakers for you in this session. First person is Michael Bilsborough. He's a registered architect in both the UK and New Zealand and is currently at Aecom, New Zealand, as a practice leader for architecture, design and planning. So the perfect trifecta there. He's completed projects recently on mixed tenure, and you may remember that Nick Smith this morning mentioned a Housing New Zealand pilot project, the 324 pilot, and Michael was deeply involved in that project. He's going to ask some fundamental questions about the crisis of affordability that we're facing and offer us some creative solutions to address that crisis. So please welcome to the stage Michael Bilsborough.
Thank you for the introduction. Hope I can live up to that. The first slide, please. Oh, where's the clicker? So one of the things I wanted to talk about today was just defining a little bit about the issues influencing the housing market here within New Zealand, particularly Christchurch and Auckland. I'm going to touch on housing supply, density, housing choice, a little bit about place management and mixed tenure, and then also a little bit about procurement just at the end. So between 2000 and 2007, house prices in New Zealand more than doubled. House prices fell about 10% during the GFC, and that compared to about 30 to 40% decrease experienced elsewhere in the world. House prices have been on the rise again, and particularly in Auckland, and you can see that they're now above the pre-GFC peak that was experienced in just end of 2007, beginning of 2008. Auckland's now well above that peak, and when you compare average house prices against average incomes here within Auckland, there's definitely an issue with affordability, and I think the average house price sits around about 7 or 8 times the mean income. But there are about 62,000 houses within Auckland that are underneath $400,000 value. However, that's down from about 91,000 last year, so down about a third in the last year. The median income is about 90,000, household income is about $90,000 in New Zealand, so at about 4.5% of the median income, these could probably just about be considered affordable. So what's going to happen over the coming years? Auckland is the fastest growing region in the country, and over the next 20 years, the population is set to increase to the point where over 40% of the population live in the city. Christchurch is also back in growth mode after a decline following the earthquakes, but the shape of this population is changing. The families and students that left after the earthquake have been replaced by young male workers who are moving in to support the Christchurch rebuild. Along with this population growth across the nation, there's an interesting change in demographics. Over the last 40 years, the population has aged from 26 to 37, and over the next 20 years, it's expected to increase to 41 years. This gradual aging, combined with lower birth rates, is going to will result in a reduced average household size for all regions. The additional 500,000 households we expect in New Zealand in 2031 will be made up almost exclusively of 1 or 2 people family units. Auckland is going to account for half of these households, so you're going to get roughly 250,000 new households in Auckland. We're going to increase from 466,000 to 723,000 by 2031. Predominantly, these will be 1 and 2 family household units. And in Christchurch, we're going to see an additional 39,000 over the same period. While the population is increasing, we're struggling to provide a choice of quality housing, quality and affordable housing where people want it. In Christchurch, the supply of homes was significantly reduced as a result of the Canterbury earthquakes. There was 180,000 homes in Christchurch before the earthquake, 171,000 lodged claims with the EQC, and 16,000 are now considered uninhabitable due to damage or being in the red zone. Auckland's had historic low rates of construction, and this has led to an increasing shortage of homes. The council estimates there's a shortage of 20 to 30,000 homes in the region, and thinks that we need 13,000 new dwellings each year over the next 30 years to meet growth demands. To start to address this, central and local government have partnered, as we're all familiar with, and have implemented the Auckland Housing Accord. So the plan here is to free up 39,000 sites over the next 3 years, and we have started to see an increase in consents, but it's going to take up to 10 years for some of these land to get developed and houses to get built. So the accord's important, but we're still some way off of achieving the level of construction of new homes that we need to achieve to meet Auckland's growth. So both in Auckland and Christchurch, we're seeing a growing population trend, and a trend of smaller households. We've currently got a significant shortfall of homes and not supplying the amount that's required to achieve the growth, and the supply chain is really not gearing up to achieve the level of construction that we need. So is there a crisis? I think in Christchurch, absolutely. We can see in the rental market there's a lot of inflation, and that's really making the most vulnerable in the community, pushing them out of the market, and there's a lot of homeowners are migrating to the surrounding regions. In Auckland, I think less so. There's still options with affordability, and it's probably just not what people want, and there's a lot of pressure in Auckland, but I suspect it's probably not quite at crisis yet. It is coming though. So what are we building? Houses are getting bigger, households are getting smaller. We're surprised that we've got an affordability problem. Since the 70s, our house size has bloated to amongst the largest in the world. Currently, we average about 205 square meters per house. And 4-bedroom houses are the biggest growing type of house that we're building at the moment. The biggest by volume would be 3 bedrooms, but the 4-bedroom houses are growing in proportion. Compare that to some average dwelling size, new dwelling size overseas. So in the UK currently, the average house size is 85 square meters, but the average new build would be 76. Now, I'm not suggesting that we go down to 76 square meters per house, but do we really need 3 times as much as what is being built in the UK? So where are we going? What's Auckland going to look like in the next 30, 40, or 50 years' time? We often consider, compare ourselves to Vancouver. When Auckland reaches the current population of Vancouver, which is about 2.3 million, so it's suggested that that might be shortly after 2031, are we still going to be one of the world's most livable cities? I think we need to start thinking about building cities for the 22nd century, and we need to start thinking bigger, and consider the legacy that we're leaving behind for future generations. So why do we need density? People like living in cities. 86% of the New Zealand population live in the urban areas, and this is being reflected by our changing lifestyles. There are smaller households, as we've talked about. There's more people renting because they can't afford to buy. More people are moving from the suburbs because they enjoy proximity to work, retail, and entertainment. And there's also an increasing number of retirees who are downsizing and are looking for a lock-and-leave convenience of apartment living. So how can we visualize density? Mount Eden currently has about 14.5 dwellings per hectare. If we continue at this rate, we're going to need an extra 12,500 hectares of land, equivalent to 23 times the Auckland CBD. I think the reality is this is not sustainable. Something's going to have to give, and we're going to have to find some new solutions. So density has different forms. New Zealanders are often suspicious of the idea of high density and don't really understand the true benefits. There's a common misperception that high density means high rise, and we're all familiar with the high rise failures that we've got across our cities here within New Zealand and overseas. However, typically these are examples more often of poor planning, bad design, bad construction, inadequate management, rather than the actual density and the number of units within the developments. So what are the options going forward? We need to find a new way. We need to change the way we locate, plan, and design and develop neighbourhoods. We need to develop typologies that can achieve the missing middle density that can fill the gap between the city and the suburbs. This needs to be well-designed housing that will provide good environmental outcomes, good quality common areas, improved accessibility, and most importantly, housing choice. But it's not just about increasing density, it's also about social and affordable housing. This is a key part of the puzzle. We know that the investment and to invest and remodel, sorry, confused here. We know the investment to remodel and grow the social housing stock within New Zealand is not going to be met by government alone. We need to create partnerships between not-for-profit organisations, central and local government, and the private sector to create stronger, more diverse and inclusive communities. Access to warm, dry and safe housing close to public transport that opens up options to access education and employment opportunities will go a long way to providing social equality to the most vulnerable in our society. Moving people up through the housing continuum over time will reduce housing, health and crime-fighting burden on the state. So some of the things that we're doing just within this area at the moment within Aecom is 3 pieces of work that I just wanted to touch on very briefly. One of the initial things that we've been looking at is a housing typology study across both Auckland and Christchurch. So just a comparative analysis of a number of developments, looking at a range of issues, house types and arrangements, master planning, urban design pricing, and it's a very high-level analysis, just looking at the market, doing some surveys and that type of thing. So it's not like we had any particular access to any of the particular development information. But the main findings that I think that came out of this, just at a high level, was that the most successful developments offered a broad range of choice with regards to housing typology and price point, and also provided a good, strong master plan and good urban design. The developments that had a narrow range of target, and whether that was at the low end or the high end, or less successful urban design concepts, seemed not to be as successful. We've just started a piece of work in Tamaki, which is a place management study. So I apologise for the graphics, we have literally just started it. This is working with ACPL to develop a planning framework based on the principles of place management to create an integrated social communities. We've got 2 sites within Tamaki, and the idea is to develop a framework that can form a roadmap to develop other areas. And it's a little bit of social engineering. It's about creating medium density, mixed tenure, integrated communities. So we're quite excited about that, and it'll be interesting to see what comes out of it. And then we also work in the built space, obviously, designing housing developments. We're involved in student affordable market housing in Auckland and Christchurch predominantly at the moment. So we've got lots of ideas. How are we going to deliver them? The proposed building of more homes in Auckland is going to occur at the same time as the Canterbury rebuild. This is going to take significant, this is going to cause significant resource pressure across the national construction industry. At the moment, there are reports of 6-month lead-in time for precast within Auckland alone, and we haven't even ramped up the construction yet. If over the next 3 years, the Accord targets are met and the required 12,000 new homes are built in Canterbury, new dwelling construction will need to be 9% higher than the height of the pre-GFC boom. Given that nationally we build around about 15,000 new homes annually, this doesn't really seem particularly realistic. And Auckland's target is to, over the next 30 years, is to basically absorb that by the 13,000 new homes that they're planning. So it's probably fair to say that the housing building programme within Christchurch and Auckland is going to take much longer than what we anticipate. This pressure is going to result in potentially construction cost inflation, coupled with more housing demand, is going to potentially negatively impact housing price, and we'll see the house pricing rise and affordability issues continue. To avoid these problems, we need to be more responsive on the supply side and develop innovative consenting solutions. Building design and building sector needs to be more innovative, and we need to particularly look at, I think, off-site and prefab construction. And we need to look at opportunities of engaging with countries outside New Zealand and look at importing skills and products as well. I think we don't have the adequate supply of resources and skilled labour within New Zealand to deal with the demand that we're going to be experiencing. One of the things that we've experienced internally is when we're trying to, we've worked with developers who've tried to bring products in from China to use, and that can be quite difficult sometimes getting them certified within New Zealand. We had a project recently where we had some prefabricated bathroom pods that were being put in a housing apartment development. They came from China. We couldn't get anyone to certify the cabling, and so all the cabling was ripped out and redone by a Kiwi electrician, and we got our producer statement from it. We need to find a better way of managing these things. What happens in Australia is quite often they'll send certifiers to manufacturing plants in China, and they can certify things as they're coming off the work stream in China, pack it up and send it to a job site in Australia. There's no reason why we can do similar things here in New Zealand. So perhaps some of the challenges we might want to consider today as we move forward is how are we going to provide enough affordable housing? How are we going to provide housing choice? How are we going to provide appropriate social housing? Grow the not-for-profit sector? How are we going to provide sustainable solutions? And how are we going to overcome the resistance to density that the community has? And I thought I would just leave you with this quote from the previous planning director of Vancouver. And I think these are the types of things that we need to be focusing on over the next 20, 30, 40 years here in Auckland. Thank you.